والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This is supposed to be a presentation. I have slides, but I think it's too troublesome to put down the screen and turn on the projector, so I'll just try to use my voice as colorfully as possible so that you don't fall asleep while still take something about this history. So when I was in the University of Hong Kong, and sometimes I sit in the prayer room, and people would come in and saw me for the first time, and they would always ask, "Brother, are you from Malaysia or Indonesia?" Like, they don't even give me a chance to be Chinese. And then I tell them that actually I'm 100% made in China. And they're very shocked. And I'm very shocked by their shock, because being made in China is the least shocking thing. Why would you be shocked if something is made in China, right? They know there are Muslims in China. Everyone acknowledges the fact that there are Muslims in China. But the thing is, the Chinese Muslims collectively is a rather introverted body. So we don't connect with the word a lot throughout history. And there are many reasons for that. There is the civilizational trait that we've got. The Chinese people are generally quite introverted. We don't go out and we don't really communicate that much. And there are also other political reasons, there are historic reasons. So generally speaking, people don't know a lot about Chinese Muslims. People don't hear a lot about Chinese Muslims. Sheikh Omar Suleiman would go on the street and fight for the rights of Chinese Muslims. Well, I doubt he has ever met any Chinese Muslim, right? So our group is quite introverted and in a way a little hidden, right? Behind a veil. People don't know much about us. That's why I feel it's part of my responsibility, and it's a true story. I was in the United States. I was in San Francisco, and I went into a small masjid to pray Asr, and the imam is Bangladeshi. And he saw me and he's like, "Brother, where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from China." And his facial expression is like he has just seen a miracle from Allah. And it's like, "Brother, please sit down, let's have a cup of tea." We sat down and he said, "Brother, you have a huge responsibility." I said, "What is that responsibility?" He said, "You are from a country with 1.3 billion hardworking, diligent, friendly, and nice people. Good people, smart people, intelligent people. People who have made great contributions to humanity throughout history. And most of them, the vast majority of them, don't even know about the hereafter, let alone pursuing the hereafter. They don't even know. And that's your responsibility." And I was holding a cup of tea and I was shaking. That's my responsibility. So I am a part of, the people who should take up this responsibility. And that's why, today I'm really happy that I have this opportunity to introduce you very briefly about the history of Islam in China, how Islam came to China, how the Chinese Muslims, established their identity as Muslims, how did they live through this history in a very, unique state, in a very unique civilization. Because in Western civilization, religious freedom, personal freedom, was always something central to individual life. You would be taught at a very young age that the whole country should not feel satisfied if one person's right is being violated. And that is very different from our civilization's perspective. In China, we would think that if my sacrifice means that my group, this Chinese nation, would be better off, then let me make the sacrifice. So it's a different mentality. And let's see how this history played off. So when did Islam come to China? That's the question Brother Taha asked. There are actually more than 10 different opinions on the exact time that Islam came to China. But the majority of historians believes that in year 651, we had the first written record of Muslims' presence in China. That's the Tang Dynasty in China. And that at the same time, it was the Khilafah of the third Khalifa, Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh. So at that time, after the conqueror, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, the Khilafah, the Islamic Empire, was already very vast geographically. It has taken in a large part of the Roman Empire. It had taken in a large part of the Persian Empire. It had taken in North Africa and even into Europe. So it was a large Khilafah, and it just happens that at the same time in China, the Tang Dynasty was a very prosperous dynasty. This was the second emperor of the Tang Dynasty, and it was one of the prime time of Chinese economy and prosperity. So it was a very well-off society. Everyone was happy. It was peaceful. So naturally, you can think that two civilizations, both are very strong and both are very prosperous. Naturally, they would have more encounter and more communication with each other. So a lot of merchants from Central Asia and from the Middle East started coming to China for trade, for business. And according to some records, in this time, 651, that's more than 1,300 years ago, there were already hundreds or thousands of foreign merchants in the capital city of China, Chang'an, at the time, modern-day Xi'an, and most of them were Arab and Persian Muslims. So obviously, when they came to China, they also brought Islam with them, and they started showing a very unique identity, and the Chinese people called them foreign guests. Okay, foreign guests, they're from a different place, and they are our guests. So at this time, Islam was there, but it was clearly a foreign religion. It was something exotic. It was something that belongs to the big bearded man. It's something that belongs to these traders, these businessmen from far away. It's not something Chinese, right? And the Chinese people have a long cultural heritage of their own. Normally, Chinese people don't tend to take in foreign cultures. We feel happy and content with what we have. So they are just foreign guests. Now, after the Tang Dynasty, there was the Song Dynasty. So during the Song Dynasty, there were two major business roads. One is called the Silk Road, right? That's from the Middle East through Central Asia all the way to China, northwestern China. And in my hometown, which is in northwestern China, we still have a lot of sites that were used for, as the middle stations for this Silk Road. And there was also a sea road from, the south of the Arabic Peninsula all the way to Guangzhou, the city in southern part of China. And Guangzhou at that time, you can see, was a world business port. There were many foreigners coming to this port, and when they came, they settled down, they need to pray, they built a masjid. So the first masjid that was ever built in China was in Guangzhou. It is believed it's called Guangtasi, the masjid of the light tower. And if you go to Guangzhou, you can still visit that masjid. It's very beautiful. So at the in the Song Dynasty, when these foreign guests, what was once considered foreign, they started settling down. They're like, life is pretty good here. Life is peaceful here. And Chinese women are also beautiful. Let's convert them to Islam and let's marry them. Why not? So it happened for another half a century or 1 century. So they started coming into China, and they started becoming more indigenous. They started becoming people of this land. So you can say that in the Song Dynasty, Islam is already starting to become something that is Chinese, that is accepted by Chinese. In 1206, year 1206, Genghis Khan united Mongolia and then went on to Russia, what we know as Russia now, and all the way to Central Asia and even Middle East. So he conquered a vast land, right? A huge kingdom, and many of the conquered land belonged to Muslims before. In year 1258, remember this year, for the world would never be the same after this year. Well, the world would never be the same after any year. But this year was particularly special because the Abbasid Khilafah was destroyed by Genghis Khan. At then, it was the center of knowledge and studies. Baghdad was totally sacked, totally destroyed. Libraries were burned down. People were killed. And then eventually, even the whole of China in 1276 was conquered by Genghis Khan and the Mongols as well. And it's the new dynasty, the Yuan dynasty. So remember, before the Yuan dynasty, the Muslims were considered more or less, marginalized. They are outsiders. They are, on the peripheral area of China. But during the Yuan dynasty, first of all, the ruling race is not Han Chinese anymore. The ruling race is Mongols. And when they came into China and they started this government, obviously they had to, maintain their rule. So they took a lot of Muslims from Central Asia and Arab world to China to establish, industry and economy and all kinds of things. So many Muslims started coming in, artists, partisans, and scholars. And once they came, they started having more communication with the Chinese people, and they actually raised their social status a lot. So at this time, there were already, in the Yuan dynasty, and the Yuan dynasty only lasted for about maybe 200 years, slightly more than 200 years. But there were, in total, 22 provincial level governors that were Muslims. And obviously, when you have leaders, when you have people in the government that are representing Muslims, then the status of Islam raised a lot in China. It became an official language, an official religion, a recognized religion. And even, subhanAllah, you wouldn't believe this, in the Yuan dynasty, there was one governmental department called the Department of Qadi, Hadith, Department of Qadi. And Qadi is the Arabic word for judge. Okay, Qadi is somebody who would rule and give a legal decision based on Sharia. So we had a department called the Department of Qadi because the government basically said, okay, you Muslims, you deal with your issues with your law. You don't have to conform to our law. You use your own sharia to decide what is best for you. So that was the freedom, you can say, and the tolerance during the Yuan dynasty. So there was a Chinese saying which says that 袁时回会变天下. So during Yuan dynasty, Muslims are all over the world. Although the Chinese people thought China was world. So actually Chinese people, Muslims were all over China. But we have this saying that Muslims were all over the world during the Yuan dynasty. And when it came to Ming dynasty, we're getting close to modern time. During the Ming dynasty, the situation changed dramatically because it's a regime, again, established by Han Chinese, the majority of indigenous local Chinese people. And this dynasty, the emperors were not tolerant of foreign ideas and philosophies as those of Yuan dynasty. So they started restricting other, ideas. They started, defending more of the local religions and local thoughts, and others are considered unorthodox. So Confucianism, Taoism, these local thoughts are being put to a superior position, and Islam and even Christianity started coming in as well, are considered unorthodox and unwelcome and restrained. There was a crisis for knowledge because people started losing contact with their religious identity. They started being assimilated into the Han culture or the local Chinese culture. So one of the Dr. Ma Jianming, who did his PhD in International Islamic University of Malaysia, he said something quite interesting. He said if Yuan dynasty was the time that Muslims assimilated Mongols, a lot of Mongol soldiers, when they conquered Muslims, they converted to Islam because they saw the sabr. They saw the faith in these people, and they saw the discipline of these people. They saw the kind of mercy and kindness that these people who lost in battle, but they still had this courage, they still had these qualities. Many Mongol soldiers converted to Islam and became Muslims. So Yuan dynasty was the time that Muslims assimilated Mongols, but Ming dynasty was the time when the Han, the local Chinese people, assimilated Muslims. And this was the time when Chinese Muslims would become more and more Chinese. This is something really special about Chinese Muslims. Nowadays in European countries, in North America, in Western countries, basically, the haters or the, what do we call them, the xenophobics, they would always say to Muslims, go back to your country, right? They immediately make this mental relation between Muslim and immigrant. So if you're a Muslim, you're not from us. You're not from this place originally. Go back to your country. But in China, it's very different. Nobody has ever said to me, go back to your country, because that is my country. Everyone knows that I am from China. My ancestors are from China. My family has been there probably for over 1,000 years. Nobody can say to me, go back to your country. This is my country. This is something special about the Chinese Muslims. And this happened during the Ming dynasty. They assimilated into the culture and became more and more Chinese. There's nothing really uniquely, distinctly special about being a Muslim. You wouldn't even know, right? Until a person gets to 50 years old. You don't even see my beard now, although I'm trying really hard. But when I get to 50 years old, that's when you see maybe he's a Muslim. But now he's just a Chinese. If I don't tell you, you wouldn't know, right? That's why when I was traveling around the world, going to different places, I was stopped a lot at masjid. I would go there and people are like, hey, hold on, brother. What are you doing here? What do you want to do? Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasul. Happened a lot of times. And then during the Ming dynasty, the Chinese Muslims started developing several systems to maintain their identity, to maintain the knowledge. And there was the mosque education system, similar to madrasa system in South Asia. So in this masajid in China, they would teach Islam using Arabic and Persian languages. They would use very little Chinese, actually. And they would teach tafsir, they would teach ahadith in Arabic and Persian. And that's why even nowadays, you go to northwest China, there are a lot of Muslim people who are, relatively less educated. They don't even speak Chinese very well. They don't even speak Mandarin perfectly. But if you go there and you tell them that Aina hammam or wudu, and these words they know. They know these words because Islam has been transmitted in a way that is mixed with Arabic and Persian and other languages. It's not purely Chinese. And we have a lot of Persian words in our daily usage. We don't call fajr, we call it bamda. It's Persian. We don't call salah, we call it namaz. Similar to South Asia, we use Persian words. Anyway, another way of maintaining knowledge and defending this identity is called Han Kitab. Kitab is Arabic word for book, and Han is actually the ethnicity of the Chinese people. What is meant by Han Kitab? So before the Ming dynasty, Islam is something that we only teach to Muslims. So Muslim parents teach Muslim children. That's it. We never tried to tell people about Islam. We never tried to tell people what is this religion. But during the Han Kitab movement, this is a movement, many very learned scholars started composing books in Chinese with reference to Chinese ideas and Chinese conceptions to introduce Islam to them. For example, I read this amazing book, and subhanAllah, you know, a lot of times when people think of Chinese Muslims, they think of, oh, these poor people, they're being oppressed, they're being sent to concentration camps, they don't even know their religion, they're poorly educated. But actually, we had great scholars in the past. Okay, I've read many books in English, in Arabic, in Chinese, and some of those Chinese books are just amazing. In this one book, the author, he started, and his format is very interesting. He wrote a book, it's basically like a Q&A. So he said, my guest asked me, why don't you eat pork? And he starts answering, right? And in his answer, he didn't answer from an Islamic perspective first. He started quoting the ancient Chinese literature, from like 200 BC. The rules and regulations of the Chinese emperor at the time to the Chinese people. And he said, well, actually, you have more regulations pertaining to food than us. Right? It was written in ancient Chinese literature that if a meat is not cut properly, we will not eat it. So he said, you have more haram stuff than me. Why are you accusing me of being restrictive and things like that? He started giving ideas about, he started introducing Allah with reference to the Chinese concept of sky, tian. It's actually similar to our, because tian in Chinese, subhanAllah, it's one and it's yi and da, one and big. The two names of Allah compose the Chinese character tian, sky, and it's always been considered the highest supreme being who is in control and the creator of everything, similar to our concept, our monotheist religion. So he started using all of these concepts to introduce Islam, and so during this time, Islam really gained a momentum. More and more people got to know Islam. And after the Ming Dynasty, there was the Ching Dynasty, another harsh time for Muslims. So throughout this history, you can see there are good times, there are bad times. Sometimes it's freer to practice, sometimes it's more harder. And that's why, sometimes when Chinese Muslims complain about our current situation, oh, it's so hard, I envy you, brother, you're in Hong Kong, you can have at the peak conference, we can't even talk in our own room. We're afraid to talk in our own room. What if there's a red dot appeared on my head and I'll be gone, just for talking about Islam. But the thing is, a brother reminded me that if you look at Chinese history, we've had worse times. We've had much worse times. And those dynasties are gone. The Tang Dynasty is no more. The Song Dynasty is no more. The Qing Dynasty is no more. But Islam is still in China. Muslims are still there. Right? Islam never dies. These dynasties will go away. These politicians will go away. But Islam is always there. This is Inna Dina Indallahi al-Islam. Very quickly, I want to recap. We're coming to the modern age. After the Qing Dynasty, there was the Republic of China, which is different from the People's Republic of China, 1911. And during this time, it was relatively free. We started, composing many books. Professor Muhammad Majian, the one who translated the Quran into Chinese, was born in this period as well. He studied in Al-Azhar. He was a recognized scholar not only by Chinese Muslims, but actually by Muslims all around the world, especially in Egypt as well. He translated the Quran, and then PRC was founded in 1949, and we continued to try our best with whatever we are able to maintain our identity. And I can guarantee you, I personally guarantee you, when I go back to my hometown, every Ramadan I try to go back to my hometown for a few days at least. And yes, the Muslims there may not know a lot about Islam. They may not have as much knowledge about fiqh or Sharia, but Fajr prayer, any masjid. In my hometown Lanzhou, there are more than 30 masajid. You go to any masjid, even a smaller one in an alley, for Fajr prayer, at least 100 people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He distributes His blessings and mercy to different nations in different ways. Some nations have more knowledge. Some nations have more IT skills for da'wah. And some nations just have more persistence with their basics. And this is something that I think the Chinese people are special for. They stick to their basics, and they're nice people. So I want to change this perception that, oh, the Chinese Muslims are just poor, oppressed, poor people. No, we have had scholars. We have had shining stars. We have made great contributions to Islam. The earliest Hajj from China to Mecca was before year 1000. in the 10th century, in the 9th century, they were already going for Hajj. After they had to travel for 3 months or 6 months, half a year. But they were already doing that. So let's change that perception. I encourage you, you're at the gate of China. I encourage all of you, when you have an opportunity, go to China, go visit the first masjid in Guangzhou, go see the Chinese Muslims, talk to them, look at what they're doing, and you will feel the power of Islam, really. When you go to China, you see Chinese Muslims, you will not feel sad for Islam, you will feel proud of Islam. And this is, my message to you. And if you have more questions about Chinese Muslims or the history of Islam in China, you want to see some pictures, feel free to come to me, and I'd be more than happy to share with you. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.